In this video, we're going to review how to use right triangle trigonometry to find a missing side in a right triangle when we know one angle and when we know one side. So we want to remember sine equals opposite over hypotenuse, cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent equals opposite over adjacent. So, ka, toa. In order to use right triangle trigonometry, I'm going to need to label the sides of the triangle from the perspective of the angle that I'm going to use. So my opposite side is across the triangle from my angle. So my opposite side I already know is 10. Then my adjacent side is the side that is next to the angle that I know, but is not the hypotenuse. The adjacent is a leg, just like the opposite is a leg. Before we continue, I want to just make sure that you also know that if you know that this is a 40-degree angle and this is 90 degrees, then you can add these together and get 130 degrees. Then you can subtract 180 minus 130 and get 50 degrees. And you could use this angle if you wanted to. If you're going to use this angle, then you're going to relabel the sides from the perspective now of the red 50-degree angle. So now this would be the opposite, and this would be the adjacent when you're doing your calculations, and this would still be the hypotenuse. So your labels of the legs depend on which angle you're going to use. So here's my opposite and my adjacent to use the 40-degree angle. For me to find the unknown adjacent side, I'm going to have to see what do I know. I know the 10, so I know the opposite side. So if I know the opposite and I'm trying to find the adjacent, then I'm using opposite and adjacent, I'm using tangent. So I can say that the tangent of 40 degrees equals opposite over adjacent. My opposite is 10. And my adjacent I'm trying to find. So here, because what I'm trying to find is in the denominator, I'll cross multiply. So a times the tangent of 40 equals 10 times 1 is 10. Now to isolate the adjacent side, I'm going to divide both sides by the tangent of 40. So sorry that that's a mess. This is 10 divided by the tangent of 40. So a equals 10 over tangent 40. Make sure that your calculator is in degree mode. So to make sure of that, I can hit mode and then make sure that I already have degree highlighted, hit enter on degree. Okay, now I'm ready to do 10 divided by the tangent of 40. So that's 10 divided by the tangent of 40. So this is approximately 11.92 units. So approximately 11.92. All right. Now if I needed to find the hypotenuse using right triangle trigonometry, I'm going to imagine that I never found the 11.92, and I'm going to again use the 10. Now I'm using the opposite and finding the hypotenuse. So that's O and H. So that means I want to use sine. because sine equals opposite over hypotenuse. So the sine of 40 degrees equals opposite over hypotenuse, where I know that the opposite is 10. Again, my unknown is in the denominator, so I'm going to cross multiply. And I'll get h times the sine of 40 equals 1 times 10 is 10. This time I'll divide by the sine of 40. So divide both sides. 10 divided by sine of 40. And then again, I can use the calculator to estimate that. So this is approximately 15.56. That's an approximation. So we've used the sine and we've used the tangent. Now I'm going to do a different example where we show how to use the cosine. And we're going to have an example where we already know the hypotenuse. So we can show you how that will look in the setup. So we have a new triangle with a new side length for the hypotenuse and a new angle measure, 35 degrees for this angle. So to label the sides of the triangle from the perspective of this angle, then the opposite is across the triangle. And the adjacent is here next to the angle, but it's on a leg. So we can use the cosine when we are trying to find the adjacent and we know the hypotenuse. The angle is 35 degrees. So we would say the cosine of 35 degrees equals adjacent over hypotenuse. But now we already know that our hypotenuse is 20. In this case, what we're trying to find is in the numerator. So it will be isolated as soon as we multiply both sides by 20, because this is just 1 times a. So that's just like that. So multiply both sides by 20. So we get that a equals 20 times the cosine of 35. When we estimate that on the calculator, we get a is approximately 16.38 units. So again, to use right triangle trigonometry, make sure you have a right triangle where you know one side length and one angle. And then remember that sine equals opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. Label the sides of the triangle from the perspective of the angle that you're going to use. Then see what you're trying to find. We used cosine because we were trying to find the adjacent and we knew the hypotenuse.